The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. The story of William Kamkwamba. In the heart of Malawi, a land ravaged by drought and poverty, there was a young boy whose name would one day be known across the world. His name was William Kamkwamba, and though he came from humble beginnings, his vision and determination would change not only his life, but also the future of his village, and eventually an entire nation. This is the story of how a teenage boy, armed only with an inquisitive mind, a few books, and his unwavering will to survive, harnessed the wind to solve the most dire problem facing his community: the lack of water. The struggle of the land. Malawi is a country in southeastern Africa, known for its vast, rugged terrain and its vibrant communities. But it is also a country that has struggled with famine and poverty for decades. For the people of William's village, Dawa, the reality was harsh. Like many African nations, Malawi's economy was dependent on agriculture, but the people lived with the constant threat of drought. In 2001, when William was just a boy, the country faced one of the most severe droughts in its history. For months, the rains failed to come, and the crops that the people of Dawa relied on for survival withered in the dry earth. For farmers in Dawa, water was a scarce resource, and many families lost their livelihoods as their crops died and the ground became parched. The lack of water meant there was little food to eat, and what little they did have was becoming increasingly difficult to afford. It was a dire situation, one that would push William to think beyond the traditional ways of farming and to seek out an innovative solution to bring water back to the land. But William wasn't born into wealth or opportunity. His family, like many others in Malawi, was poor. His father, William Kamkwamba, worked hard to provide for his family, but the meager income he earned from farming was not enough to protect them from the overwhelming forces of nature. William's family didn't have the luxury of expensive machines or technologies that could solve their problems. But William, like many young boys in rural Africa, had something more valuable than wealth: his curiosity. The spark of inspiration. It all started with a single book. William was a curious child, always eager to learn. His interest in science and technology was nurtured by his father, who believed in the power of education, even though the family could barely afford to send William to school. The closest secondary school was miles away, and it was expensive to attend. But Trywell believed in his son's potential, so he made sure William got the education he could. In school, William's fascination with the world around him grew, but it wasn't until he was forced to drop out due to the financial hardships brought on by the drought that he began to search for his own way of solving the problems that faced his family. With no more formal education, William turned to the local library, an odd small building filled with dusty, discarded books. It was here that he found a book that would change everything. The book was called Using Energy, and it was a simple textbook on physics. The title seemed unassuming, but within its pages, William discovered the fundamental principles of energy generation. It was a light bulb moment for him, a moment that would set him on a path no one could have predicted. As he flipped through the book, he saw diagrams of windmills and water pumps, and something clicked in his mind. He realized that if he could build a windmill, he could harness the power of the wind to pump water from the earth. If he could bring water to the fields, he could grow crops, and if he could grow crops, his family and his village might survive. The beginning of a dream. With no formal training in engineering, no access to materials, and no financial backing, William faced an overwhelming challenge. But what he had in abundance was determination. His village had never seen anything like this before, and the people were skeptical. How could a young boy, with no resources or support, possibly build a windmill that could help his village, they thought. But William was undeterred. He had a plan. He began scavenging for materials. He searched the village for old scrap metal, broken bicycles, and anything that could be repurposed to build his windmill. He even found a broken fan in a neighbor's yard, which he took apart to examine the blades. His hands were often cut and bruised as he worked, but William's passion only grew with each passing day. His father, at first unsure of the idea, started to see his son's commitment. Though Trywell knew the task was daunting, he began to help where he could, giving William access to tools and offering moral support. William's first design was far from perfect. It was rudimentary, made from bits of metal and wood, and it was much smaller than the large, efficient windmills he had read about. But for William, it was enough to get started. As he constructed the windmill, he relied on the simple knowledge he had gleaned from the book and his own understanding of the world around him. He crafted the blades to catch the wind and connected them to a rudimentary pump system. He then linked the pump to a system of pipes that would carry the water to the fields. The first test was far from smooth. The windmill creaked and groaned, the blades were too flimsy, and the pump barely worked. But it didn't matter. For William, the failure was not the end. It was just the beginning of a process of learning, adjusting, and improving. Every failure brought him closer to success. Every problem he faced, he solved. He used everything he had learned, every scrap of material he could find, and every ounce of his energy to build a better windmill. The first success. It took several months of trial and error before William's windmill was ready for its second test. This time, the blades spun more smoothly, and the pump seemed to be working better. William could hardly contain his excitement. He watched as the windmill turned, the blades catching the wind, and water began to flow from the ground. It wasn't much at first, but the trickle of water that emerged was a sign of something incredible, the first success of his young life. It wasn't long before the rest of the village took notice. They had heard about William's project, but now they could see it with their own eyes. The boy who had been dismissed as a dreamer was now bringing life-saving water to the fields. The villagers, many of whom had never seen a windmill before, were in awe. They marveled at what William had done, and many began to believe that change was possible. But the windmill was still far from perfect. It was fragile and required constant adjustment. It wasn't large enough to pump enough water to irrigate the entire village, but it was a start, and a start was all William needed. As word of his success spread, people from nearby villages came to see the windmill and ask William for help. Though he was still young and lacked the resources to make his windmill larger, he was more than willing to share his knowledge. He began to teach others how to build their own windmills and wind-powered pumps, offering advice on how to harness the power of the wind. His humble windmill had become a symbol of hope, and William had become an inspiration. The ripple effect. William's invention didn't just change his village. It started a ripple effect that spread throughout the country. Soon, local news stations began to take notice of the young innovator from Dawa. His story was shared far and wide, and William became a symbol of what was possible when you had the courage to dream big and the determination to make your dreams come true. His story caught the attention of international organizations, including the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, which helped to fund further developments in his windmill technology. Over the next few years, William was able to expand his windmill design, making it more efficient and capable of providing water for larger areas. He also developed additional renewable energy projects, including solar-powered water pumps, which helped bring clean water to even more villages in Malawi. Recognition and legacy. In the years that followed, William Kamkwamba's work earned him recognition around the world. He was invited to speak at international conferences, where he shared his story and his vision for using renewable energy to solve global challenges. He received awards, scholarships, and even the chance to study abroad, where he expanded his knowledge of engineering and renewable energy. William's achievements were celebrated globally, but for him, the most important recognition came from the people of Malawi. His windmill had not only brought water to the fields, but also hope to a country that had long been ravaged by poverty and drought. Today, William Kamkwamba's story serves as a reminder that ingenuity, resourcefulness, and the willingness to keep pushing forward, no matter the obstacles, can change the world. From a small village in Malawi to a globally recognized innovator, William's journey continues to inspire future generations to dream big and work hard to turn their dreams into reality.